How's it going, you guys? So today I'm going to talk a little bit about why NoFap is so damn powerful. So obviously there's a lot of amazing benefits that go along with NoFap, and many people kind of try to tie it in with magical thinking, and a lot of people don't really seem to understand exactly why NoFap is so powerful. Now, of course, there are many reasons why, um, but in particular, there's one very simple, basic, and scientifically validated principle behind this that is very easy for most people to understand. Essentially, the mechanism of NoFap, especially being away from pornography, it all has to do with overstimulation of receptors in your brain. Oversensitization and overstimulation, over desensitization of dopamine receptors. Okay, so your feelings are a direct result of stimulus. Now, you can control your emotions and you can control your reactions to different stimulus or stimuli, but essentially, when you see a hot girl, your biology is designed to become aroused. And that's nature, because part of our purpose for being alive is to have sex with the opposite sex and create new babies, right? Well, anytime you watch pornography, what you're doing is you're stimulating your receptors to unnatural stimuli. Essentially, you are entertaining overstimulation of the receptors, okay? Now, there's a very powerful TED Talk called The Pleasure Trap, okay? I forgot what doctor it was by, but if you just look for The Pleasure Trap, TEDx on YouTube, you'll find exactly what I'm talking about here, okay? And now this is very general knowledge, very widespread understanding. Everyone knows about this, or everyone should know about this. It's very common knowledge, but most people in the NoFap community don't seem to understand it. Look, listen. Especially for all you crazy people who think, oh, like NoFap, I'd love to see more science. There's not enough research to back up pornography addiction, blah, blah, blah. Shut the fuck up. It's literally the same thing as when you eat junk food. When you eat junk food, when you eat sugar, overly stimulating foods, what they do is they shoot up your brain's arousal beyond normal limits, and then your brain has a negative feedback mechanism. Basically, it passes a point of no return, where eventually you've stimulated your brain so high that it has to desensitize your brain to that stimulus. And so what happens is your brain craves more and more and more to get that same stimulation over time. And what you actually get is the opposite in return. Your brain no longer feels good when you watch pornography, the same way that your brain no longer is going to feel good when you have sex with your girlfriend, because you're training your brain to be aroused by this high stimulus of pornography. And that high stimulus is so much higher, that pornography is so much higher of a stimulus compared to your just normal girlfriend that you see every day. Like, you're so used to seeing your girlfriend naked that it doesn't stimulate you the way that pornography does, especially because you can see new girls all the time, new fetishes, new videos, all this stuff. So pornography is extremely destructive to your brain's dopamine pathways in that regard, because it allows your brain to keep seeking new levels of arousal, and at the same time it's bringing you farther and farther away from normal arousal and normal stimulation in everyday life. When you quit pornography, what most people find is that everyday tasks seem more and more enjoyable. And the rare people who don't experience this usually have some other problem. But 75% of people that do NoFap, this is what they experience. They basically experience reading a book is actually pleasurable again. Doing homework is actually not as hard as it used to be. Talking to people in everyday life is a lot more pleasurable. Making videos on YouTube just feels good. It's easier to take action and harder to procrastinate. The main reason why is because your brain is now becoming more and more sensitive to normal stimulus, because you're no longer entertaining this high stimulation of pornography. Okay, the same way that, if you know somebody who's addicted to meth or some kind of hard drug, what happens is they cannot function without that drug, and the more they do this drug, the less and less normal life feels good, especially without that drug. Like, they can't just live a normal life. They have to have that overstimulation of the drug in order to enjoy anything. Like, their brain can only function on this high level of arousal. And anything below this high level of arousal is boring now. And this is also the same reason why Facebook and Instagram and these types of things can be destructive over time, is because you're training your brain to be like entertained by millions of different posts every minute versus the mundane one thing at a time of everyday life. It makes regular life seem boring in comparison, right? So, reading a book becomes boring compared to flipping through Facebook posts, It's a matter of overstimulation. It really is just like overwhelming to your brain's receptors, if that makes sense. So, we could talk about, and really this is the same thing as any kind of neurotransmitter or hormone system. When you consume too many carbohydrates at once, over time, your insulin receptors become desensitized. It really is the same thing. But of course, if you've been brainwashed by vegan propaganda, you'll assume that, oh no, there's no way carbs and sugar can cause insulin resistance. Well, listen, not carbs, but an excess of blood glucose at one time, yes, that's what causes insulin resistance. Your insulin receptors become desensitized to glucose and insulin. Okay, that's part of it. Besides the beta cells in your pancreas being destroyed and other issues. So what you find is fasting and low carb diets help to reverse diabetes. But even any calorie restricted diet in combination with exercise seems to be powerful. But best results come from low carb and fasting. But it's cool. You can disagree with me if you'd like. I've done a lot of research and I've reversed my own issues as well. So whatever. Point is, it's all about desensitization of receptors. Okay. Now the same thing goes with taste receptors, interestingly enough. Anybody who has, gone on an extreme diet for a long period of time has noticed the human body's taste receptors and their gut microbiome that makes them crave foods changes after a couple of weeks of being away from certain foods. So here's a great example, okay? I went vegan, I'm not vegan now, but way back in 2014, I was vegan for about a year. And at first, I was craving meat and dairy and eggs. Like, I was craving animal foods so much. But then after about 2, maybe 3 weeks, I stopped craving them. And then all I craved was fruit and carbs and sugar. And then I remember towards the end of that, because I was feeling horrible, I was suffering from all sorts of problems, despite doing it all right. Eventually, I just said, fuck it, I'm going to go to a paleo diet, because all of my problems should have been reversed with the paleo diet. Well, interestingly enough, I was so disgusted by meat because of being brainwashed by veganism. I thought everyone who ate meat was disgusting, and there was dead, rotten animals putrefying inside of them. And I actually believe that body odor was caused by meat. It was really crazy. Anyway, when I started eating meat again, I started to notice my cravings for meat came back. And after cutting out carbohydrates for 3 weeks, I stopped craving them completely. Like, I can actually walk through a bakery aisle and not crave donuts and things. Now, if I start eating those things again, even if I eat them once, my body starts to crave it again. And mind you, sugar and carbohydrates, especially refined, unnatural carbs, these are even more powerful, especially with artificial flavors. These things overstimulate your taste receptors on your tongue and the gut microbiome in your stomach. Makes you want to crave them even more. And these are the more processed foods that do this. More processed foods overstimulate your receptors, and they make you crave these things in a more powerful way than just regular carbohydrates or whatever alone. Okay. When you eat artificial flavorings and artificial sweeteners, they make you crave these foods even more. And there's plenty of information that you can find on actual documents from high-ranking food company executives, okay? People who worked for these junk food companies. They actually have invested millions of dollars into researching how they can make their foods more addictive. And these addictive junk foods like chips and donuts and snack cakes and fast food and whatnot, like the texture of these foods have been created in a way, like ridged potato chips, for example, and certain flavorings and certain textures and the way it melts in your mouth. All of these things, they've been modified using artificial ingredients to make them as addictive as possible. Because, like, basically what they found is certain textures and certain flavors actually stimulate your taste receptors more than just regular potatoes alone. If you eat a potato chip, even a potato chip with salt, cheese, and butter, let's say, compare that to a potato chip. Well, we know that they're both going to be addictive because of the carbs, salt, and fat content. But the potato chips are going to be even more addictive because they have artificial flavors and sweeteners in the texture profile, in addition to the carbs, salt, and fat. Okay? So I'm not here in this video to tell you which, diet is the best, and is it the carbs or the fat or the salt. I'm here to just tell you guys, like, hey, it's overstimulation. And when you remove the overstimulation, normal foods taste good again. When you remove the porn, normal sex feels amazing again. Your dick starts working again. Your brain is no longer like a rat race. It's no longer easily distracted. You're no longer bored when you're doing regular productive tasks, okay? Your brain can enjoy normal life again, all right? You can be happy again. And this is why most people walk around like zombies, because they're overstimulated. And most people watch porn. Obviously most men, but most females too. You'd be surprised. So anyway, be very conscious of all of the things in your life that you overstimulate yourself with. It actually numbs your emotions over time, and it prevents you from taking the actions necessary in your life. This is why so many people want to believe that porn is not a problem. You're just a sex addict. You're not a porn addict. No, actually, it's porn. Yeah, it's porn. Sex addict, that sounds like human. Because we're designed to create. It's just that, create life. We're designed to create babies, right? Some men have more sexual opportunities than others. Porn addiction is not the same as sex addiction. If you think that, well, you're probably a porn addict or you just lack understanding, haven't done the research. It's really sad that there's so many crazy people don't know what they're talking about, but they're going around acting like they do. So, leave your questions and comments down below, and I'll talk to you all next time.